let's skip down then to part 3. So this will be the last part we're covering in this video, and then we'll be doing another video with parts 4, 5, and 6, just so that we can have a more manageable task. All right, so now we know about this one. In part 3, we have a much longer text, and we have now 5 questions again, and we have to choose multiple choice, A, B, C, or D. We know from the previous video as well that question 11 is in the first paragraph. Question 12 is second paragraph. Question 13, third paragraph. Question 14, fourth paragraph. They go in order of the text, but question 15 is a general question about the whole text itself. In this case, it's what would be a good introduction to this article, and then the student has to choose, the exam taker has to choose the correct title or introduction for this article. But that happens because you have to read the whole article first, so we'll leave it until last. Now, there's a couple of ways you can approach this. They can read, now that we know that paragraph 1 is question 11, you could do it paragraph by paragraph. Read this one first, then go over to 11 and answer that, then that, then that. Or you can read the whole thing to get a general idea and then go back again. But as I said, time is an issue. If the person is a fast reader, there's no worries. But of course, that's not everybody, and especially in a second language. So let's have a look at this and see how we can find these artists. Well, these questions. Artist Peter Fuller talks about his hobby. So we're talking about an artist who has a hobby. So there's a popular idea that artists are not supposed to be into sport, but mountain biking is a huge part of my life. It gets me out of my studio and into the countryside. But more importantly, racing along as fast as you can leaves you no time to worry about anything that's going on in your life. You're too busy concentrating on not crashing. The only things you pay attention to are the pain in your legs and the rocks on the path in front of you. All right, so that's the introductory text. We go now to 11. So Peter enjoys mountain biking because it gives him the opportunity to enjoy the views. He can use the time to plan his work. He is able to stop thinking about his problems, or it helps him to concentrate better. There was a line in here. But more importantly, so here, by mountain biking is a huge, it lets me get out of my studio and into the countryside, which may give people the idea that it gives them the opportunity to enjoy the views in the countryside. But that's all speculation, all right? Because later on, it doesn't say anything about views. We're just assuming the countryside has beautiful views. And this is a thing that happens a lot. Students projecting their own ideas and experiences onto the text and not reading the words precisely. It has to be very, very logical. And also after this, it says, but more importantly. So all of that was blah, blah, blah. Now we come to the important side of things, all right? Racing along as fast as you can leaves you no time to worry about anything that's going on in your life. So C, he is able to stop thinking about his problems, all right? So that's very important as well, to have that. Don't project your experiences on this. So maybe when the student goes mountain biking, they look at the views and they think, oh, that's the answer. But it is not, all right? So they have to be very careful and look out for, but more importantly. All right, so first paragraph, 11C. Let's look at the next paragraph. I'm in my 60s now, but I started cycling when I was a kid. In the summer, my friends and I would ride our bikes into the woods and see who was brave enough to go down the steep hills or do big jumps. The bikes we had then were not built for that and often broke. So I used to draw pictures of bikes with big, thick tires and would be strong enough for what we were doing. They looked just like modern mountain bikes. However, it wasn't until many years later that someone actually invented one. By the 1980s, they were everywhere. Okay, so we're going back to his youth and all the way up until the 80s, and now where the modern mountain bike is. All right, so in number 12, what does Peter say about cycling during his childhood? Okay, so where was he? He started cycling when he was a kid, and they used to do all these crazy jumps with his friends. The bikes weren't built for that, and they often broke. Okay. And that's about his childhood. So he is sorry he didn't take more care of his bike. No, I don't think that is the case at all. It doesn't say anything about that. His friends always had better quality bikes than he did. We weren't talking about the quality. The bikes we had then weren't built for that and often broke. So all of them had the same quality bikes. So its friends didn't have better quality. His bike wasn't suitable for the activities. I think we have a winner. And D, he was more interested in designing bikes than riding them. No. He was most definitely not. He drew pictures as a kid, but he wasn't designing them. So it's C. His bike wasn't suitable for the activities. It says here, weren't built for that and often broke. All right, so it's important as well. Like, we found the answer in C. It doesn't mean you stop reading. Read D, because this one may as well, or you may be projecting your own ideas again onto it. So read all the questions, and then, okay, now we've double checked it isn't D, we can go back and mark C. All right? Let's have a look now at the next one. At that time, I was into skateboarding. I did that for a decade until falling off onto hard surfaces started to hurt too much. Mountain biking seemed a fairly safe way to keep fit, so I took it up instead. I made a lot of friends and got involved with racing, which gave me a reason to train hard. I wanted to find out just how fit and fast I could get, which turned out to be fairly quick. I even won a couple of local races. Okay, so Peter says he returned to cycling after several years because he had become unfit so that he could enter races in order to meet new people and to replace an activity he had given up. So because he had become unfit, there was something about fitness. Mountain biking seemed a fairly safe way to keep fit, so I took that up instead. But wait a minute. So I took that up instead of what? Instead of skateboarding, which brings me to 13D, to replace an activity he had given up. So he didn't do it to keep fit. He was already keeping fit with skateboarding, but he gave that up because he was hurting himself too much. So he had to replace it with an activity. And it's D. So in order to meet new people, is that the reason he did it? I made a lot of friends and I got involved in racing. It's an offhand comment of making friends. It's not the reason he did it, to meet new people. And so that he could enter races. No, I even won a couple of local races. All right. So he got involved in racing. Again, an offhand comment, which is not the reason he did it. So what is the reason he returned to it? And that was to replace an activity, which was skateboarding. All right. So there's a lot. This one's a bit of a tricky one there. All those things are mentioned in the text, but they are not the reason that he changed. So let's look at the last one, 14. In the end, I stopped racing, mainly because I knew what it could mean to my career if I had a bad crash. But I still like to do a 3-hour mountain bike ride every week. And if I'm out cycling in the hills and I see a rider ahead, I have to beat them to the top. As I go past, I imagine how surprised they would be if they knew how old I am. So 14, how does Peter feel about cycling now? So here we are in the last paragraph. He is proud that he is still so fast. He is keen to do less now that he is older. He regrets the fact that he can no longer compete. He wishes more people were involved in the sport. I think I'm leaning towards A. He is proud that he's still so fast because when he sees somebody, he has to beat them to the top. And as I go past, so he's going past other younger drivers, so he is still very fast. And he imagines how surprised they must be. But, all right, well, we've been through this before. We know we must look at the other ones. He's keen to do less now that he's older. He never mentions that. He still does a 3-hour mountain bike ride every week. That's pretty regular. He regrets the fact that he can no longer compete. He never mentions that. Mainly because I knew it could mean to the end of my career if I had a bad crash. All right. He just didn't want to have a bad crash. He didn't regret it. He wishes more people would get involved in the sport. I don't think he mentioned anything about that at all. So, okay, we're correct. 14A. And then we have to do 15, which is based on the entirety of the text. What would be a good introduction to this article? For Peter Fuller, nothing matters more than mountain biking. Not even his career. No, he talked about how he was going to get hurt and how he had to stop. Here in his words, he tells us why, so we're going to discard A. B, artist Peter Fuller takes mountain biking pretty seriously. Yeah, he does. Here he describes how it all began and what he gets out of it. Well, that's pretty spot on, I would say. He does talk about his childhood and how it all began and breaking the bikes and the design and then changing from skating and all of that. And what he gets out of it. Like he gets fitness out of it. He gets to surprise people as he races by them up hills. All right, so B looks pretty good, but let's not stop there. In this article, Peter Fuller explains how he became an artist only as a result of his interest in mountain biking. He did not say that at all. I can't even find anything in the text that relates to that. All right. And D, after discovering mountain biking later in life, Peter Fuller gave up on art. No. Okay, so we can already stop there. He never once mentions in this text that he gave up art to become a mountain biker. All right. So I think we go back to our original B, which if you look in the question and we look at the answer sheets here, we can skip down. At the bottom, there's the assessment on page 18. You can find all of the answers as well. And we are 15B. That is correct. Okay, So those are the first three parts of this that we have time for in this video.